You are kneeling in a felt tent on the Mongolian steppe in the last cold days of your life. Your wrists are bound with leather cord. Across the fire from you stands the only man who ever called you brother, twice, by oath, with blood. He is about to become the most powerful ruler the world has ever known. And in a few minutes, he is going to have you killed. The question that will decide how, with dignity or without, is the same question that has decided everything about the man standing over you since he was 9 years old. What do you do with the people who betray you? This is the story of Genghis Khan, and the decision that reveals more about him than any battle he ever won. Because before there was an empire, there was a boy who learned, the hard way, that even family will leave you to die. Everything that came after was built on what he decided to do with that lesson. Around 1170, a boy named Temujin was about 9 years old when his father, a minor chieftain named Yasuge, was poisoned by a rival Tatar clan at a meal he thought was a peace offering. Yasuge made it home, just long enough to die. What happened next is the part most versions of this story skip past too fast. The clan that had followed Yasuge didn't rally around his widow and children. They left. On the steppe, loyalty followed strength, and a dead chieftain's family had none. His mother, Hoelun, raised 5 children alone through a Mongolian winter, eating roots and marmots to survive. Historians point to one incident from these years as the clearest sign of what that abandonment did to him. A dispute over a stolen fish and a lark with his older half-brother Bektar ended with Temujin killing him. He was maybe 10 years old. The lesson never left him. The people who are supposed to protect you will leave, the moment it costs them something to stay. Everyone after that had to prove they were the exception. Temujin found the one relationship that seemed to break the pattern. A boy his own age, from a rival clan, named Jamukha. They swore an oath of Anda, blood brotherhood. A bond steppe custom held stronger than blood itself. They swore it twice. For years it held. When raiders kidnapped Temujin's wife, Borte, it was Jamukha who rode to get her back. For a while they shared a camp, shared command, and by most accounts loved each other as brothers. But a boy who's learned that loyalty always breaks eventually watches for the break, even where he doesn't want to find it. As their camp grew, the cracks weren't about one betrayal. They were about what kind of leader each believed in. Jamukha stood for the old order, authority by bloodline, loyalty owed upward to aristocracy. Temujin was pulling in commoners, judging men by what they could do, not whose son they were. 2 visions for what came after the old steppe order, and only one could win. The split wasn't one dramatic moment. It was a quiet parting in the night that neither man fully explained. What followed was almost 20 years of on and off war between 2 men who'd once sworn to die for each other, until Jamukha had nothing left but a handful of followers and nowhere left to run. It wasn't Temujin's army that caught Jamukha. It was his own men. 5 followers who bound their Khan and dragged him in, expecting a reward for handing over his greatest enemy. Temujin's response tells you exactly what kind of empire he was building. He executed all 5 on the spot. Not for capturing Jamukha, but for betraying their own lord. Loyalty, even loyalty to his enemy, was the one thing he wouldn't punish. Then, he was alone with the boy who'd sworn brotherhood with him twice. The secret history of the Mongols describes Temujin offering to renew the bond, to let Jamukha rule beside him again. Jamukha refused. He said 2 sons cannot share one sky. That keeping him alive would only poison the loyalty of everyone watching. He asked for one thing: a death without spilled blood. The honorable death reserved for nobility, so his spirit could pass on whole. Temujin granted it. With Jamukha's death, the last person alive who'd known Temujin before any of this, before the title, before the empire, was gone. What remained was pure function. 4 years later, in 1206, the clans united under him and gave him a new name. Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. What he built became the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But it's worth sitting with what it was actually built out of. Not ambition alone, but one very early lesson, acted on over and over. The people closest to you will eventually choose themselves over you. So, choose first. Centuries later, a very different empire would be built on the exact same foundation. Early abandonment, turned into fuel. A girl born into poverty in rural Mississippi, raised for a time by her grandmother, who'd go on to build one of the most powerful media empires in modern history. Her name was Oprah Winfrey. Where Genghis Khan's answer to abandonment was to trust almost no one, hers was the opposite bet entirely, an empire built on radical openness. Same wound, completely different blueprint. That's next. The environment that breaks you doesn't decide what you build. It just hands you the materials. What Genghis Khan built with his was ruthlessly effective, and it also came apart within a century, the moment no single person was left to hold it together by force. If you want to see what the same wound builds when the material is trust instead of conquest, Oprah's episode is next.